Until very recently, it cost a small fortune to get a Mandrel bender in your shop. The Model 600 and Mandrel attachment revolutionized that market and made it way more affordable. Now we have a Mandrel extension, allowing you to bend full-length 20-foot sticks from the middle all the way to either end to process nearly any design made out of bent tubing in your shop, both affordably and without sacrificing a ton of floor space. We show you how right now. The space-saving design of the RoadFab Mandrel attachment and Mandrel extension really is based on the wall rack storage system. So we've got two identical wall racks at the top here that are screwed into studs, and those hold both the Mandrel attachment itself and the optional Mandrel extension if you choose to make or bend longer pieces. You can add these to any bender that we sell in any order. They also both have available drip trays. The Mandrel attachments have a through Mandrel lubrication system that is optional, and you can drain those easily using just gravity and the drip trays. They're removable, easy clean. We're going to install the Mandrel extension on the bender frame first. We're going to use this bolt alignment tool that we have available as an option with the Mandrel or Mandrel extension. And all it does is it holds the bolts in place so they don't move while you put the extension on, because it can be kind of heavy. Now we're going to do some rearranging on our racks. So first I'm going to take off the bridge bracket, cart extension, and this is the stuff we're going to use first. So I'm going to move the 1/2-inch Mandrel rod out of my way and grab the operator side Mandrel frame. We're going to slide these two holes over these two bolts, and gravity should actually be able to help us hold it on there once we get it slipped on. There we are. And now we can just back away and put the thin hex nuts on at our leisure. And I'm going to tighten these a little bit now. I'm leaving them loose so that we can still put the brackets on in the back. So the next piece that goes on is the non-operator side Mandrel frame half. Tension for the non-operator side. Slip it over the bolts. Once we do so, hex nuts on. The next step is we have to put on brackets. These tie the Mandrel extension frame down to the base of the bender to help give it more support. These install at the bottom with 5/8 hardware and at the top with 1/2 inch. And if you ever struggle to get them aligned, you just lift up the Mandrel extension and the bolts will drop right in. And then we'll do the same bracket for the non-operator side. Now that the height and angle are set by the reinforcement brackets, we can tighten down big hardware going through the fender frame. And then we can take out the alignment tool. We should not need it for a while. There's a bunch of places that can be stowed on your bender cart. The next piece is what we call a bridge bracket, and this is going to connect the mandrel extension and the mandrel, and also provide a very sturdy base to attach the cart extension. You already saw how compact the cart extension is when it's on the wall rack, and now we're going to put it together and put it to use. You can adjust the pressure and steering characteristics of your cart by changing the washers between the casters and the caster feet. So I have this leg extension set up so that it is slightly taller than the back of the cart. It's going to raise the back of the cart that way, and I'll show you the easiest way to install it if you have yours set up that same way. Put this right in here, and we're going to put the bolts through. Now that we have a pivot point for the leg set for the mandrel extension, we are going to unlock the casters. We're going to use it to pivot the cart up, and of course we're going to keep our hands clear right here, and it'll allow us to really easily put this together. And now, as you can see, it's picked up, it moves very easily, and we'll of course take a 1/2-inch bolt that I stowed right here, and bolt it together. Now it's rigid and safe. We're going to of course install the other 1/2-inch hardware and tighten down this bolt. Some of you find that when you're bending extremely heavy material in your bender that's a really long stick, it tends to hang down really far in the back because it gets pretty flexible. The mandrel extension, while great for bending using mandrels on long pieces, that's not its only application. You can also use these 4 holes here, which match up with the pressure die locations in the machine, and you can take a pressure roller die like this one, put it through, in this case, the 6-inch CLR hole, and now you'll have a nice smooth roller that will support longer material in your machine with a lot of weight going straight down to the ground. That way you don't have that floppy piece hanging out the back. Installing the mandrel frame on the mandrel extension is not that hard. You just have to remember that the lower bridge bracket goes on the outside of the frame, and the frame goes on the outside of the extension frame. So we're going to keep the hydraulic hardline out of the way. We're going to put the bridge bracket on the outside, and then the mandrel frame on the outside as well. We'll pivot it on a 5/8 bolt right up here in the front. As soon as that bolt goes in, gravity holds it. It's sitting down on the bridge bracket here. We can put on the nut at our leisure. And then the second 5/8 bolt goes in right through there. And then we'll do 1/2-inch bolts here and put on the non-operator side. You might recognize my second wrench here as a Mandrel position tool. That's its primary job. Secondary job is being a light-duty wrench when you need one. There we are. Our next step is to connect the through Mandrel lubrication line. This is what takes the Mandrel lubricant from the pump all the way to the Mandrel while you're bending. So here is the quick release Mandrel rod and extraction system. Support the front. And lift up our spring here. Put it onto the 2 rods, engage our spring, and it's installed. I'm going to take our lubrication line, quick disconnect, and there we go, it's installed. Now we'll grab a second rod. This one has one of our caps on it to help prevent the lubrication from coming out of it. So we'll pull that cap off. This rod threads into the first one. So the entire mantle system is put together. We do have an upper bridge bracket that can be used. Sometimes this assembly can get to be so long that sometimes the forces can make things go a little bit sideways. So there's another bracket that ties this all together through the top to make it extremely rigid. We've tested it on some very heavy-duty Mandrel bending applications, and it does prevent movement of the whole system. I like to set it into the pin first, helps hold it in place while we put in all the 5/16 hardware. Now let's put a mandrel on this machine and bend a 20-foot stick right in the middle. We're bending some 1.5" 070 wall stainless, and so we've got the appropriate size mandrel. This is what's going to hold the inside of the tubing open as it's being bent, prevent those wrinkles and deformation from forming. We're going to install this on the rod right now. And of course, when we're mandrel bending on a 6-inch radius, we use 2 pressure roller dies. So we'll put one of those in the regular location for 6 CLR. And we'll put one in the back for mandrel bending. So now we're going to use the mandrel position tool. What we do is we put the mandrel nose taper in line with the beginning of the bend. So that nose taper is really easy to find. It's where those two lines start to diverge, where the point of tangency is for the nose taper, and you put it right where that starts. And you can also just measure an offset here. We start 1 1/4 inches, so it's very easy to do it that way as well. Using a simple mechanics ruler, you can set the position of the mandrel accurately enough. I've got this one set at exactly 1 3/8. The rag can be helpful to catch some of the mandrel lubricant. I just primed the whole system, got the lubrication coming out of the mandrel. They have holes that the lubrication comes out of. This is a pre-polished material. It's 316 stainless, low carbon, so it comes wrapped in plastic. So we're going to clamp right here on clamp location 1 per our layout. The next thing we're going to do is pump this Mantle lubrication pump a couple times. This is going to distribute the bend all exactly where the bend is going to start through the holes in the mandrel head, help lubricate the bend. We're going to zero the degree indicator by advancing the tube until the pressure dive pin is snug, and then we're going to put the degree indicator on 0. So right there it just got snug, so we move to 0. And now we can complete our bend. We can pump lubrication during the bend. As soon as we have this set of holes available, we can move the ram back to that side. Now, I've never bent this material before, so we're not bending full speed. Be careful. And again, once we can get to the third set of holes, one thing you'll notice is our mandrel attachment and extension are both very narrow. One of the reasons for this is super long 180-degree bends require to be bent where the ends actually go past each other. That can be accomplished since you can just take the tubing and force it off to the side of the mandrel. This of course only works on more pliant materials like this 1.5" 070 stainless. I'm just double checking our angle. We read about 188 before spring back, about 180 after. I zeroed it on the bottom tube and I'm getting 0.2 on the top, so basically a 180. It's within 1/5 of a degree, which is good enough. When we do that, we make sure that there's no tension on either of these tubes, that they're relatively loose in the machine. If they're sprung, then our reading won't be accurate. Now we can take the mandrel out of the bend by just turning the crank. There are several ways to get the tubing out of the machine at this point. The mandrel has been pulled out of the bend using the mandrel rod and the crank at the back. And if this gets stuck in any way, we can pull we call the C assembly. This is a black part that the crank goes through. We can pull that out of the machine and take the entire mandrel rod out if that's holding it up. We can also remove either of the two rolling element pressure dies from the machine. If we do not need to do that, we can just remove the clamp onto 180 and pull the tubing right out the front. There we have a nice, extremely long, 180-degree bent hoop, and the bend is nice and round, as you can see, and we can measure this and calculate the actual deformation in that bend. It's 1.456 is the measurement I'm getting. So we can plug that in to the calculators at roguefab.com. Figure out exactly what percentage deformation that is. So we threw a piece of the same stainless in there. I want to see what it does with no mandrel at all. case it's moving with our Mantle position gauge, we don't need to have it in there. And there you can see with no mandrel, obvious immediate wrinkling, and deformation is we're at 1.375, which is quite a bit of deformation. As you can see, we've got mandrel and no mandrel. The biggest difference, of course, being the inside bend, wrinkle, and the other one's not. As you guys saw, this bend is 2.8% deformed. Despite it looking beautiful, we actually still have room for improvement there. We can move the mandrel further forward and make another bend and get it better. We're not going to do that in this video, but I want to let you guys know that this could be done to about 1% deformation overall if we did some adjustments. This is our first attempt, and 2.8 is pretty good. Obviously, it's definitely a sellable bend. So, if you're looking for any of the tools used, such as angle cubes, bender, mandrel, extension, they're all going to be linked in the description. If you're trying to enter our keyword comment drawing, use the word long in your comment, L-O-N-G. That'll enter you to win a $100 gift card. Full terms and date of drawing are at roguefab.com/drawings. And those sweepstakes terms are also in the description. Please don't forget to subscribe to this video. It helps us out more than you guys could possibly know. Thank you for watching.